I received a call. I still remember the first time Laura mentioned her partner. We were having dinner on an ordinary Wednesday, reheated pasta, and the news in the background. She put down her fork on the plate, crossed her legs, and dropped it. Since I started working with Julian, everything is going better. He does understand how money works. Not like you who are even afraid to change banks. She didn't say it laughing or as a joke. She threw at me like an absolute truth, as if I were a child who needs basic things explained. I have always been prudent with money. I grew up watching my parents count coins to make it to the end of the month. So when I started earning a little better, my first rule was simple. No crazy debts, no stupid risks. Laura was a complete opposite. For her, credit was free money. The installments are nothing, and the future will take care of itself. We had been married for 9 years. I worked as an administrator in a logistics company. She as an accountant in a consultancy. In theory, we should complement each other. In practice, she felt superior and never missed an opportunity to remind me. "You have a poor mindset, Sergio," she told me one night while checking her laptop on the sofa. "That's why you'll never get out of where you are." I looked at our ATM apartment, the paid-off car, the full fridge, and wondered how poor that was, but I kept quiet. Laura had that gift for turning any discussion into an exam that I always failed. The partner appeared more and more in our conversations. Julian here, Julian there. That Julian says we should diversify. That Julian is buying properties. That Julian knows how to deal with banks. We could too. She dropped one day without looking up from her laptop. "But of course, with you it's impossible. Everything scares you." "It's not fear, it's prudence," I replied. She clicked her tongue. "Prudence is not throwing away food. What you have is mediocrity." The seed was already planted. Days later came the ambush. She called me at work, insistent, as if the house was on fire. "Sergio, can you come out for a moment? I'm down here, it's urgent." I went down with my heart racing, thinking of an accident, a health problem, something serious. I found her leaning against the car, impeccable as always, with a folder in her hand and a face of absolute determination. "Get in. We have to go to the notary," she said, without greeting. "To the notary? What for?" "For something that's going to change our life." "Get in." There's no time in the car. She explained it to me, if it could be called that. "Look, Julian has seen a very good investment opportunity, but to move the money quickly, we need him to be able to manage some things for us. It's just a notarial power for banking matters, nothing more. I already signed it. You're missing your signature." I felt a knot in my stomach, a power so that he can handle our money. "Don't be dramatic. It's not our money. It's the capital we're going to move to invest. Do you want to spend your whole life earning a little over 1,000, or do you want to grow?" She looked at me sideways with that mixture of contempt and challenge that I already knew too well. "Julian knows what he's doing. We alone can't. But why does it have to be in his name? Why don't we do it directly ourselves?" She huffed. "Because he already has a structure set up, the contacts, the companies. Do you think the banks will open doors for us like they do for him?" "Sergio, please don't be naive." I try to breathe deeply. I want to read everything calmly. I'm not going to sign something I don't understand. There came the real Laura. "You know what? I'm fed up with your loser attitude." She spat, digging her nails into the steering wheel. "Always making excuses. Always with fear. You don't trust me. You don't trust what I do. You make me look like an idiot in front of my partner. Do you understand? Because he already thinks you're a burden, and at this rate, he's going to be right." The words pierce me. Burden, loser, fear, all in less than 30 seconds. "I haven't said I don't trust you," I murmured. "I just want to understand. What you want is to continue with your little salary and your gray life. Very well, perfect, but then don't come crying when you see others advance. And another thing," she looked at me fixedly, "if you don't sign, it's over. I'm not going to continue with someone who holds me back. I already have enough with carrying this house. I alone carry this house, I alone." She said that while I had been paying almost the entire mortgage for years. Even so, the blow hit me where it hurt most, the fear of losing her, of losing everything we had built in the notary's office. The document seemed endless. Pages and pages of legal terms, clauses, references to accounts, very broad powers in favor of Julian. I barely managed to follow half of it. Every time I asked something, Laura squeezed my thigh under the table. It's standard, Sergio, she interrupted. The same as we all sign, right, Julian? He, sitting with his perfect suit and his fake smile, nodded. Relax, man. This is just to speed up procedures. We all win. I signed. I know. I was an idiot. But at that moment, I felt cornered between humiliation and the fear that Laura would carry out her threat. The following months were a strange mixture of calm and small alarms. Laura seemed happier, more attentive to her phone, more busy. Every time I asked about the supposed investments, she answered with technicalities. Now we're in the structuring phase. You don't understand, she summarized curtly. I continued going my job, paying bills, filling the fridge. Some new direct debits appeared in the joint account, but she always had an explanation. Commissions, internal movements, Julian's things. And I swallowed it until one Tuesday morning, while reviewing some orders in the office, my phone rang with an unknown number. Good morning, Mr. Sergio Medina. We are calling from the risk department of Banco Central Hispano. We need to confirm with you the purchase of property in the name of Mrs. Laura Gomez and Mr. Julian Ortega. I felt my blood freeze. A purchase of what? I asked, with a broken voice. The employee cleared her throat on the other end of a home, a house with a mortgage linked to your policy and to notarial power that you signed a few months ago. I hung up the call without exactly remembering what I said. I think I murmured something like, I need to check some data, and asked him not to sign anything until further notice. The woman's voice from the bank sounded confused, but she agreed to pause it for a few hours. I sat staring at the computer screen in the office with the letters dancing. Purchase of property in the name of Mrs. Laura Gomez and Mr. Julian Ortega. The names drilled into me. Are you okay, Sergio? Ask Clara, my colleague. You're pale. Everything okay? I lied, just a bank issue. I asked for permission to go out to resolve an emergency. My boss looked at me with an annoyed face, but nodded. I never missed work, never arrived late, never caused problems. That day was going to start changing. On the street, the noise of cars and people talking seemed distant, as if I were inside a fish tank. I walked to the nearest ATM and checked the movements of the account. There were large charges that I didn't remember having authorized, transfers to an unknown account, commissions that I never understood, all starting, coincidentally, from the month I signed that damn power. I called the bank and asked for an urgent appointment at the branch. The manager, more out of protocol than empathy, received me after an hour. Look, Sergio, he said, adjusting his glasses. Here it shows a notarial power that authorizes Mr. Julian Ortega to operate in certain accounts associated with you and your wife. He is not doing anything that the document does not allow. He pushed a scanned copy of the power toward me. There was my signature, my name, my stupidity in black letters. I want you to explain exactly what he has done with our money. I said, biting my tongue so as not to shout. The man typed for a while on the computer. He has made several transfers from the joint account to an account owned by a company in which your wife and he appear. He has also initiated the mortgage application for the purchase of a property. You appear as collateral responsible due to the power and the guarantees that were used. But how is it possible that no one notified me before? He looked at me with the condescending patience given to a clueless client. Documentation was sent to you by email and postal mail to the address listed here. He pointed to the screen. The email is the usual one, right? The one you share with your wife. There I understood another piece. Laura was always the first to check the email, always organized the papers, always took care of the procedures. I want copies of everything, I said, feeling a raging heat rise from my stomach, of the transfers, of the mortgage, of whatever, everything where my name or my signature appears. The manager sighed, but agreed while printing. My phone vibrated. It was Laura. Laura, why did the bank write to me saying that you called? What did you do? Not hello or what's wrong, just reproach, always reproach. I didn't answer. I didn't know what I could say without exploding. Instead, I opened the email from my phone. Among offers, bills, and advertising, I found several messages from the bank. mortgage application confirmation, modification conditions, update of contact data, all marked as read. I didn't remember having touched any of them. I left the bank with a stack of papers in my hand and an emptiness in my chest. I took a bus without thinking too much. I wasn't going home. I couldn't. I needed to see that property, the one they were buying behind my back. In one of the documents was the address. It was a new development on the outskirts, one of those with semi-detached houses, white facade and small front gardens, designed for families moving up a step on the social ladder. Getting off the bus, the contrast with my neighborhood was insulting. Clean sidewalks, expensive cars, not graffiti. I walked down the street until I found a number. There was a semi-detached with a reserved sign still hanging from the balcony. I stood in front of the door, reading the papers over and over. Buyers Laura Gomez, Julian Ortega. My name didn't appear except as part of the backup documentation. Suddenly, a familiar voice froze my blood. I told you this was going to look perfect with some plants at the entrance. I didn't need to turn around to recognize it. It was Laura, the voice, the bossy tone, the forced laugh. Another male voice responded. When we move and you're going to have to put some life into it. Wow! Too white for your character. Julian laughed. They were coming out of the house with a real estate agent. She was wearing that dress she said was just for work, but curiously only wore when going to meetings with her partner. He put his hand on her waist with a naturalness that felt like a slap from across the sidewalk. I hid behind a tree like an idiot. I watched them while she pointed at something on the facade and said, "The important thing is that this time the house will really be mine, not like the sad apartment where I live now. That's Sergio's. I just put up with it." The agent laughed complacently. Julian, too. I felt everything inside me break in silence. It wasn't just the money. It was a phrase, the sad apartment where I live now. I just put up with it. I was that, something to put up with until something better comes along. While I watched them walk away toward Julian's car, with her leaning on his arm, I made a decision. I wasn't going to shout or make a scene in the street. I wasn't going to show up there as the humiliated husband. I was going to let her do it. I was going to smile when I got home, and for the first time in years, I was going to start thinking about myself and how to bring down her little castle of lies. I returned to my neighborhood on autopilot, with the papers folded in the inner pocket of my jacket, and the image of the two of them leaving their house stuck in my head. Before opening the door of our apartment, I took a deep breath. I had to enter as always. No scenes yet. Laura was in the kitchen talking on her phone. When she saw me, she raised a finger asking for silence, as if I were a child interrupting an important call. "Yes, Julian, I already spoke with the bank lady," she was saying in a sweet tone, almost flirting. "Don't worry, I control Sergio." She paused, smiled. "Of course he trusts. He's very manageable." Manageable. I swallowed the bile. When she hung up, she turned to me with a face that tried to look annoyed, but in which the smile could still be guessed. "Can you tell me why you called the bank?" She shot without prior greeting. "They called me." I replied, leaving the keys on the table to confirm a property purchase in your name and Julian's. She didn't flinch. That was the first sign that she had been rehearsing the lie for a long time. That she made a gesture with her hand, downplaying it. "It's a tax strategy. You don't understand this. The house is not our house to go live with him, as you're surely imagining in your dramatic little head. It's an investment. It gets rented, resold, amortized. It's business." "And why don't I appear as buyer?" I asked, looking at her fixedly. "Because you have no place there," she replied dryly. "You were incapable of signing something so simple without making a drama. Remember? Well, now those who risk are those who deserve to win. You're just backing, as always." She said it with such natural superiority, so rooted, that it almost hurt more than the financial deception. I was backing. I was the cushion, the safety net, the one who supports while others risk with my money. "I don't want them to use my name to buy anything that isn't also mine," I said, trying to stay calm. "Tomorrow I'm going to notary to revoke that power." She laughed. Not a guffaw, but that short and cruel laugh she'd given me many times. "You revoke the power." She arched her eyebrows. "Go ahead, make a fool of yourself." Let's see what face they make at the consultancy when they find out you got scared and ran away. Julian already thinks you're a problem. You would confirm everything he thinks. I don't care what Julian thinks. I replied, Of course you care. She approached, resting her hands on my chest as if she wanted to caress me. But with tense fingers you die to prove that you're not as insignificant as you seem. But you can't. You don't. She looked me in the eyes, almost with false pity. That's why you're with me, right? To hang on to someone who does dare. I slowly pushed her hand away. If she noticed they were trembling, she mistook it for weakness. She didn't understand it was restraint. Do what you have to do, she finished. But if you throw all this away for your cowardice, don't expect me to stay to pick up the pieces. I didn't argue more. It wasn't worth it. I had to stop reacting and start acting. That night, while she slept deeply with the phone clutched under the pillow, as always, I got up silently. I took the phone carefully, almost without breathing. It had fingerprint. I unlocked it with her finger, pressing it gently, memorizing even her breathing so as not to wake her. The messages with Julian were pinned at the very top. A chat full of hearts, private jokes, and phrases that shook me more than any shout. I promise that soon you won't have to put up with that parasite anymore. When we live in the new house, I'll finally wake up next to someone worthwhile. Today I had to endure his poor man sermon. Good thing I saw you later. There were photos of them in restaurants, in his car, in the office when she was supposedly swamped with work. One where she gave him a kiss on the cheek with the caption, "Partners inside and outside the office." I kept reading. I found audios that I didn't dare play. Not that night. Not there, a meter from her. I forwarded them to myself from her account to my email. All the messages, the photos, the bank emails that she had opened before me. I sent screenshots of the notarial power, of the mortgage application, of the house reservation, everything. Then I put the phone back in its place. I lay down next to her with my heart racing and a cold certainty it was over. The marriage that had been broken for a long time, even if I didn't want to see it. What was over was my role in her play. I was no longer the naive husband, the manageable one. The next morning I pretended normality. I made coffee, toasted bread, even put the jam she likes. She got up in a bad mood, as always, complaining that she hadn't slept well, that the apartment was small, that the water took time to heat up. "We should move already," she grumbled. "I'm fed up with this dump." I looked at her with a calm that disconcerted her. "You're right," I said. "You should leave here soon." She didn't understand the phrase, or didn't want to. She grabbed her bag, checked her phone twice, and left slamming the door. As soon as she left, I opened the computer. I started with the most urgent, writing an email to the bank and the notary, requesting formal information to revoke the power. Then I looked for lawyers specialized in family and patrimonial law. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I was no longer going to improvise. For the first time in a long time, I felt that every minute counted in my favor and not hers. Laura didn't know it yet, but the manageable man had started to move. And when someone who's been silent for too long decides to speak, it makes a lot of noise. The first time I went to the lawyer's office, I felt like an intruder who had always avoided conflicts. Suddenly I was there with a folder full of evidence against my own wife. The lawyer, a man about 50 years old, read in silence the printed messages, the screenshots, the bank documents. He didn't look up until he finished. "Well," he said at the end, "your wife is not only unfaithful to you, she is also trying to compromise your assets without your real consent, and she is doing it using a power that she obtained by pressuring you. We have something to work with. I don't want revenge for revenge's sake." I lied halfway. "I want her not to ruin my life." He smiled. "Barely. Call it what you want. But this is going to get ugly. Are you ready?" I thought of Laura, making fun of my sad apartment, calling me parasite in her messages, using my name to buy a house with her lover. I nodded more than ready. The following days were a silent choreography. We revoked the power before a notary. We sent registered letters to the bank and the consultancy. We requested copies of all operations where Julian had acted as attorney. The lawyer also prepared the divorce petition, with a request for precautionary measures to protect my assets. Meanwhile, played my usual role at home. The quiet husband, the one who makes dinner, the one who asks how the day was, while she answers in monosyllables glued to the phone. One night, she arrived excited. Finally, almost everything is signed, she said, without bothering to hide the joy. When it closes, you'll see how our situation changes. Well, mine. Yes, I asked serving myself a little more rice. And what exactly is going to change? I'll stop depending on your miserable little salary. For example, she replied, drinking wine. I'll be able to go to a better place. Not this hole. And I won't have to listen to you complain about every expense. With Julian, I suppose, I said, looking her in the eyes. She didn't blink. With whoever I damn please, she smiled defiantly. Or be grateful that I drag you a little upward in the meantime. I looked at her one more second, memorizing her face. It was important to remember her like that, arrogant, convinced that the world owed her something. The bomb exploded 2 weeks later. One Friday morning, the bank summoned all interested parties to clarify certain discrepancies in the purchase and sale operation. Laura thought it was a simple procedure. She got dressed as if going to a TV interview. Julian arrived with his expensive suit and his shiny watch. I sat in front of them next to the lawyer. And what is this one doing here? Laura let out annoyed. I'm the person who has revoked the power you gave your partner to play with my name. I replied serenely. And the one who has requested to review all operations where I appear. The bank manager cleared his throat and began to explain with polite language that without that power enforced the mortgage was up in the air, that the guarantees were no longer valid, that the operation had to be rethought, and that furthermore, there were indications that I had not been duly informed of the scope of the powers granted. Julian twisted his gesture. Laura glared at me. What did you do, idiot? She spat, forgetting where she was. You're ruining our business. I didn't reply. I'm preventing you two from ruining my life. The lawyer intervened then, mentioning the divorce petition already filed, the possible responsibility of both in an abusive use of the power, the intentionality of leaving me as simple backup. The atmosphere became dense. The bank manager began to measure every word. Laura lost her nerves. Always the same. She shouted, "You're so insignificant that you can't even serve to stay quiet and be useful. That's why no one respects you." The phrase hung in the room. Everyone looked at her, the lawyer, the manager, even Julian, who seemed to realize just then who he had allied with. I stood up slowly. You're right. In one thing, I said, I no longer serve to stay quiet, and neither continue married to someone who uses me, despises me, and cheats on me. That house, let whoever wants buy it. I don't plan to pay for it. I left the bank with a mixture of relief and pain, but with something new that I hadn't felt in years: dignity. Laura stayed inside arguing, trying to save her investment, her dream life. With Julian, I for the first time stopped being her backup. Later I learned that the operation fell through, that the bank tightened conditions, that between lawsuits, fees, and her wounded pride, her dream turned into a debt and a scandal at consultancy. I lost a marriage that in reality no longer existed. She lost the toy, the cushion, and the perfect plan. And although it hurt, I confessed something. Hearing her scream that everything was falling apart without being able to blame me anymore except for having decided to respect myself. It was the only investment that truly felt mine.